We are back on Dan Time, so wind your clocks back or calibrate your clocks to Dan Time a year plus into this project, and you would think that I've reached the pinnacle. Well, I'm getting there. I'm still climbing, and it's still a journey, but you would think that I'm not capable of getting emotional or excited about another guest in this sort of way, but this is a really big deal. All the way back from episode number 6, when this was just some little side project, or oh that's cute, Dan, you got a podcast going on. Back when it was that kind of thing, like episode number 6, old logo. If you subscribe to the show, you notice the first 7 or 8 episodes, it's got the old clock and the orange slice. This guest dates back to those days. So this is back to the beginning, the roots, and I'm so happy to have him here once again. Been a long time. That was September of 23. Chris Fuhrmeister, one of my favorite people. Chris, how are you doing today?
D-Mac, great. It's beautiful. Beautiful Sunday here in Atlanta. It's an honor to be on Dan Time again. I love the new logo, obviously. And having a new logo means that now you've got like a vintage logo, like a throwback logo that you can break out on special occasions, special episodes when you want to drive the merch sales. You can break out that old logo. Be good.
I'm glad you said that, because I want to do the old logo on a T-shirt and and make that available to some of the longtime listeners, because that really signals to people that, hey, I don't just listen to Dan Time, but I've been on board since the first album, since the club days.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm at this concert and I see you next to me, and you're singing the songs from the new album that came out 3 months ago. But are you singing the songs from the debut album? Because I don't think so, and I
am. Chris, we go back a long time, and we covered some of this. Sometimes I'll try to go back if I have a repeat guest. There have been a few to date, and listen to the prior episode. I just didn't have enough Dan time to go back and listen to our first chat, or maybe there was some resistance. Those old episodes, I'm well aware of the audio quality. Some are better than others, and no. But so I don't want to retread anything that we covered, but I do know that in our first conversation, we kind of brushed over the old Birmingham news days, and as you may have seen, Will Grant finally made an appearance on the show a few weeks ago, split over 3 episodes. Folks, if you missed it, jump in, whether it's episode 1, 3, or 2. You can play any one of those first and check it out. We go into some great detail. I'm really excited, Chris, to get your thoughts on that time period. Are you still nostalgic about it? Do you ever find yourself driving down the road and just thinking about a random Zones night, or when I would swing the monitor over and show you an Onion story? Tell me about how you remember those days.
I mean, those were formative days, I have to say. I was in Birmingham not too long ago. My brother still lives over in the area. Went for a little run downtown, ran by the old the Birmingham News building. It's now, I believe, an Alex Shunera law office.
Yep.
So the news did not make it in the new building for very long. It was a tough time, I guess. But I mean, those days were, working that second shift. That was an interesting time, especially on the sports desk, when you'd basically get to work and do, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes worth of work, and then sit around for like 7 hours and waiting for all the games and everything to end, and for all the copy to come in, and cram 8 hours worth of work into the last 30 minutes before deadline. Can't imagine why I'm so stressed out all the time.
There was that lull period that could, I mean, you had to hurry up. It was like hurry up and then wait and then get ready for the big finale.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I remember we were always we were really condescending toward the news side, because we were on the sports side, and every single night was insane at like 11 p.m. when it was time to meet the deadline. and basically all the games had ended within a half hour before that, and we had to cram it all into the paper. And you'd look over on the news side, the folks who worked at, laying out the metro section or what have you. And I mean, all their stuff that comes in throughout the day. They just have a nice leisurely time. But then an election night would come up, something like that, and boy, they would act like it is just, five-alarm fire. Like it takes all hands on deck to try to cram in all this late breaking news. And it's like, this is our reality every single night. So, welcome to the club.
Yeah, you're right. It would get pretty hairy there. I don't know. I just feel like, from my perspective, I felt capable at that age,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really have a lot of experience, but I don't remember ever feeling too overwhelmed like we couldn't pull it off. And I think some of that was that I knew the team that I was on. It's just kind of we just felt like we were going to get things done.
Yeah. I mean, it pretty much, it always got done. A lot of times it seemed like that there was no real, explanation as to how it would get done on some of those nights, but it always did. So yeah, you always knew, like, no matter what state you were in and how close you were to deadline, that one way or another, this paper was going to get out.
And then as I've gotten a little older, so this is 15 or so years ago, without mentioning the names, we know who they were, but there were some characters on the sports desk that kind of put the feet up on the desk and ate the popcorn and just kind of let the young guys steer the ship and
take care of business.
I always wonder if that's how I would be now, had I been in the industry all this time and I'm a page designer or whatever. Would I be like a gosh, I want to say names, but I just don't want to. Some of them are no longer with us, so just want to keep it generalized there. But Chris, would you
Sure
take that stance and walk around and say, "Hey guys, looks like that West Coast game just wrapped up. You got those standings ready?" All the while, you've just been tending to your fantasy teams and doing whatever you would like to.
I mean, honestly, I'm trying to get to that point in my career. Like, it seems farther and farther away every day, though. Like, that's the problem. Is I mean, I have a nice desk at work that it's one of those standing desks, so it can go up and down. And what I like to do, actually, instead of stand at it, I do like to. You mentioned kicking up your feet. I like to lower it and kick my feet up on that desk, but I feel like I'm still the one grinding it out. So I have not yet reached the point where I can just go find some underling and be like, "Hey, I've been, just kind of doing nothing for a while, but I see you're kind of sweating over here, but you might add another thing to your queue real quick." I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, just from what I know about you, Chris, and haven't had the privilege of observing you in action for all these many years that we've been apart, I have no doubt that your brand really hasn't changed a whole lot, and you're still going at it pretty hard and trying to be the best you can be and put in the work, as they say now.
Yes, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work at work, yes.
So those days, yeah, I'm nostalgic about it. Will and I talked about it at great length. I think it was a very special time for him. And I look back and the characters that we were around, maybe it was the age that we were, it was probably the most fun I've had on a payroll, I think, to put it that way. Maybe there's some other job that I had that doesn't really directly compare to it that was also pretty enjoyable, but very special times. And as you get older, you realize you can't recapture those moments. You just got to go create new ones. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, for me, for all of us, really, I think. I guess you went to journalism school, which I did not. So for me, it really was like my introduction to the business, to the job, to the profession. And it turned out that I guess that's what I wanted to do because, yeah, here I am, boy, nearly 20 years later, and still doing it. So I guess it worked out for me. But thinking back on some of those times, though, it's kind of surprising because those were some hard nights.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being in the industry as long as you have, and like you said, I kind of forgot that you had not gone to school specifically for journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But 5 years as a reporter at the Atlanta Business Chronicle.
Yeah, so these days I'm actually the quote unquote digital editor. That's I don't know why I put that in quotes. That is what the name of the job is. So yeah, I'm the digital editor now. Previously was covering restaurants, residential real estate, some of the airport, general business news. So yes, I do a little more editing now. Still do some writing, but more focused on the editing day to day. But yeah, I've been. It'll be 5 years in December, which I kind of can't believe because I think that's about how long I was at the news back in the day.
Is
5 years.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in the Atlanta airport recently, and I noticed in Atlanta Business Chronicle, maybe a cafe or what would have been a newsstand back in the day, and I was like, "Oh, that's neat."
Yeah.
I kind of peeked my head in there, and there was no. This is no knock on the publication, but there wasn't like a print version of the Chronicle to be found. It was just like that was the name of the little shop and go.
Yeah, we've got a digital edition, we've got a print edition, and we just got some little like retail convenience stores as well. But yeah, I don't know why we don't have the paper there anymore. I guess distribution is different these days, but it's still good to have the branding on the sign. So I mean, you walked through the airport and you saw that sign and you thought about the Business Chronicle. So I guess it worked.
I wish that maybe more people. They're probably not. I just think that the tide has turned here. But when I'm at the airport, if I can, I kind of like to take that time to read something, whether it's a book or I think we talked on our first episode way back that I like print copies of things, magazines. I don't get my hands on a real newspaper. It's probably been months, but like last year or definitely 3 years ago, I would buy a Wall Street Journal. I would purchase a local paper a few times a month.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sitting there at a terminal, do you ever just put the digital life aside for a second, or is it hard to unplug?
No, I mean I love a print paper. And yeah, I don't know if that's because I worked at a print newspaper for so long back in when it was still, we were on the cusp of the real print to digital transition, I guess. So I can remember when it was a bigger deal to be in print than to be on the internet. So I still like print. We obviously have a print edition. It's a weekly, but I don't pick up a print paper often. But if I'm at a coffee shop or something and I see a national paper or a local paper and looks like maybe there's an interesting story on the front page, yeah, maybe I'll buy one and go give it a read. It just it feels good. It feels good in your hands. You might get a little ink on your hands and have to wash them afterward, but that's okay. A chance to stop scrolling every now and then is probably good.
Yeah, my eyesight is not improving. It's not rapidly worsening, but I do realize that, okay, I'm not 28 or even 38 anymore, so I don't know if you're nearsighted or farsighted or have any one of those.
Yeah, I get a little nearsighted myself.
So it's actually easier on my eyes sometimes to put the screen away. But man, there's a lot of things that we rely upon, all sorts of notifications, and if you go out to eat a lot, there's loyalty programs to get involved with, and you need to bring up that app to order ahead, order online, get that deal, and all sorts of reasons to tap on those little rounded edge squares on your phone.
I mean, I recently, I go to the liquor store every now and then, and there's a loyalty program at my liquor store,
Is that
which
right?
I am a member of, which I don't know what that says about me. It probably sounds bad, but you get a deal every now and then.
Chris, what do you think? And is it like this in Atlanta? And I'm just going to single out the menthol cigarettes, the menthol cigarette market in Pensacola. Every other gas station, it's a special on Newports. Special $9.04 per pack. When you buy two, or $8.68, or some outrageous price.
It's very high.
Do they have that stuff at some of the filling stations and convenience stores where they're still promoting the pack of smokes and buy two and get a little price break here?
I guess probably so. I don't pay as close of attention to that as maybe I once would have. I also live in a part of Atlanta that's like, it's basically the kind of like the opposite of what life was like when I was in my early 20s or mid 20s even. Everybody's trying to be very healthy. Everybody's exercising a lot, eating a lot of bowl-based cuisine, drinking a lot of smoothies and juices. So I just don't know that there's a huge market for, discount multi-buy cigarette deals. They don't have the market where I am. I probably just need to go to a different part of town, I guess.
You don't ever see somebody just finishing up is it a Kai bowl or an
acai bowl? Yeah.
Acai bowl and throwing that thing away and then lighting up a Newport or a Cool.
It's a classic post-meal move. I mean, you finish your kale salad, you finish your acai bowl, maybe have a little, get that cold brew coffee from the barista, and then light up. That's a classic.
Okay, don't know where that question came from, but I don't always know where some of these questions are going to appear. Chris,
I've got a question for you, D-Mac, actually, real quick.
Please. This is refreshing. Sometimes I get a question.
I just thought of it because earlier, you were talking about how you didn't have enough Dan time to do something, and it just made me wonder, do you think that REM considered naming their, early 90s, maybe 1991 album Out of Dan Time? Just out of time? It's a question that I think people probably wonder about.
I think that's an age-old question. I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
And
you should try to get Michael Stipe on the show and see if he can answer it.
Dan Time, in the very beginning, I think on the trailer episode, I said that I would reveal what it's all about. I never really have.
I think if you could get Michael Stipe on the show and get him to admit that the original name for that album was Out of Dan Time, I think that would be a good reveal of what this show is all about. Sorry to derail you there.
I have been trying to get, I won't say to what lengths I've been going to, but I guess the lead singer for Semisonic, Dan Wilson, is on the wish list.
That would be a big one. That'd be a real big one.
There's a movie that you might be familiar with. It's very special to me, as you can imagine. Dan in Real Life.
Oh, yeah. I think we've talked about this movie before.
Steve Carell.
Mm-hmm.
Problem with this one, it's not really a problem, but 2007, it was the release year, and here we are in 2024. It's not like a 20th anniversary yet. It's already past the 15th, so where do you lead in? What's the jump off here? I don't really want to wait 3 more years till 2027 and say, hey, Steve, for the 20th anniversary, would you like to be on Dan Time and kind of rehash that movie?
But, it might take someone of Steve Carell's stature, it might take you 3 years to convince him to come on the show. So if you start now, I think by 2027, you could get him booked. and then it's perfect timing.
If you pull up the movie poster for Dan in Real Life and the look on Steve Carell's face, that sums up how I mostly feel about everything.
I'm looking at it now. That's what what Dan McArdle in real life? That's your existence?
Yes. Everybody in the background, that's everybody else. They're having fun. Maybe I'm included, maybe I'm not. Maybe they're on one wavelength and I'm over here. That's it. So I really want to talk to Steve because I love that movie. And
I see some of these posters, Steve Carell, Dan in this movie is sort of face down in a pile of pancakes. Do you ever find yourself in that scenario?
With the
using them almost as a pillow. Like maybe he slept that way and he's just waking up to take this movie poster shot.
Yeah, with the kids, sometimes I want to do that.
Yeah,
I've made a
it's a
mountain
little too
of
familiar.
pancakes. I've made this what I would consider a spectacular breakfast spread, and nobody really eats it. And it's just left for me to try to make sense of and eat
Yeah,
leftovers.
you gotta take their order first. You can't go for the surprise. You gotta take the order.
Okay, we've really swung this too far around in my direction. Chris is the guest today, and we need to keep it here. We've got big development last night. The Yankees advance. This is the first time since 2009 to the World Series. I'm not very happy about it. I don't root for the Yankees. I don't like them. Never will. But I like sometimes I like having them on the main stage. So I'm good with that. And if I look at the situation, the National League, I'm happy either way. I think either way it's pretty exciting, but I think my preference is, and I'm calling it right now. I had a different thought this morning, but I'm going Subway Series. I want Mets, Yankees. What do you have a
Yeah,
preference either way?
I mean, I think that you've got to. I think you're right there. I think that Mets Yankees Subway Series, New York, the city's so nice they named it twice and gave it two baseball teams.
At one
That would be
time
pretty
three.
fun. It's one time three, yes. That would be pretty fun. But then, speaking of the three teams, I mean, Yankees Dodgers. I mean, that's a classic. That take it
Oh
back
yeah.
from when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn, and then you get the New York LA angle. I mean, it could go either way. I think it's fun, but I would agree with you. I think that Series would be the most fun. Yeah.
I encourage anybody. I did this, may have talked about it before. So early months of the pandemic, when all the sports, professional sports had been suspended, I
Hmm.
rewatched one or two of those 1950s World Series matchups,
Hmm.
at least several innings. It's really a lot of fun to look past the still photos or those home run highlights that you tend to see of that era and just actually watch a foul ball or a 6-4-3 double play or just game flow on
Hmm.
YouTube. I remember pulling that up, and I think it's what most people would probably say Dodgers Yankees is what they would love to see, and I don't think it would disappoint.
I mean, it definitely would have the star power. That would be Aaron Judge on one side, Otani on the other. I mean, that'd be pretty good. I think that if you were to ask the commissioner of baseball, he would definitely say, yes, please give us Yankees Dodgers. That's
It's
what it's all set up for, please.
it's precisely the matchup it's the number one matchup that I think the league wants and the networks want.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the Mets. I mean, Yankees Mets would still be a bit. It really can't go wrong for the league and for the networks at this point. I think what everybody was really hoping wasn't going to happen was it going to be something like Guardians Mets. That would have been
Mm.
a little lackluster considering the other options. But I think that everybody who's going to make money off of this will be happy with either Yankees Mets or Yankees Dodgers.
One thing, those of you listening, Chris and I, most years we submit predictions, and I don't know that we've ever just hit it right on the nose, but we'll do these preseason, take a shot at it, standings leading up to the World Series winner. And I was way off. I picked a Braves Orioles World Series with the Braves winning in 7. That obviously didn't happen, wasn't anywhere close to happening. Which team are you, if you had to pick one, National League, American League, are you surprised that it's just, we're not going to turn on the TV tonight and that team is playing? I'm kind of surprised Baltimore fell to the
Yeah,
wayside.
I mean, maybe it's just because I'm here in Atlanta and people, hype up the local teams, but everybody was pretty excited about the Braves going into this year. I think I don't know if everybody thought that they would definitely be a World Series contender, but I think there was a lot of excitement about the Braves. I guess once the season got going and thinking back on the regular season, it's a surprise that the Phillies didn't, that they got knocked out a little early, considering the regular season they had. But yeah, the folks in Atlanta were pretty disappointed with the Braves this year.
I know a few people, a couple other friends that I got to ask your opinion on this. When a team that you're following, whether it's baseball, football, soccer, and that team gets eliminated, do you stop watching the rest of the postseason? Does it depend on the team? Because I've got friends, Braves fan friends, who once the Braves are gone, they're no longer watching. I don't subscribe to that, but I can understand. I can understand anybody's perspective.
I think it depends. I don't follow the Braves as closely. I really don't follow them that closely at all, actually. What
do you follow?
What is it that you do here?
Now Auburn, we probably don't talk about Auburn enough.
I think we haven't talked about Auburn yet, and I think that's plenty of.
And maybe that's
Auburn
a
talk.
good thing.
We don't need to talk any more than we already have. No, I mean, so my story with the Braves is that when we found out we were moving to Atlanta, this was 10 years ago, more than that, I guess. The day that we found out we were going to move to Atlanta was the same day that the Braves announced that they were going to move from Turner Field downtown out to the suburbs.
Oh yeah.
And it's been a move that's worked out for them. And honestly, I mean, I think for all parties involved, Georgia State plays football at the former Turner Field, and it's a pretty cool setup they've got over there. That area around the stadium's been revitalized, so I think it worked out for everybody. But the Braves left a sour taste in my mouth about that. I just have never really been able to get back on board with them. So I mean, I follow Atlanta United, our local MLS team. I've got season tickets for them. I follow the Hawks, pretty big Hawks fan. I'm trying to follow the Falcons more. It's nice to have NFL games on Sundays. Helps get through those Sunday afternoons when you're like, all right, it's the end of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's we run out of things to do. What can we do? And if you have an NFL game, that gives you an excuse to just plop down in front of the TV and everybody can just watch TV for 3 hours. But yeah, and obviously Auburn, which is, I'd love it if I could stop following Auburn, but I think that one's unfortunately in my blood.
Oh man, that's a great line. I think anybody listening has a team that's like, oh, I'm too sunk in now to get out. But wow, if someone showed me an off ramp,
if I could get out, I would open that door. Yeah. But to get back to your question, I think in terms of, do you still follow the postseason or the season? Thinking about college football, maybe. I think it just depends kind of on the situation. I mean, take the Hawks, for example. I never have high expectations for the Hawks. The Hawks have pretty much proven over the years that you don't need to worry about them winning anything. So if they make the playoffs, you figure they're probably going to go out in the first round, maybe the second round.
If they're any higher than a 6 seed, it's like, whoa,
yeah,
whoa.
Right, exactly. And so they get knocked out, and you knew that was going to come. And I mean, I like NBA basketball, so I'll probably keep watching the postseason. But then if it is a situation where maybe the Hawks have this great regular season and they're the number 1 seed, and then they get bounced in the second round in some terrible fashion or something, then I'm probably like, you know what? I don't really feel like watching any basketball anymore for a little while. I'm gonna tune out until the next season tips off.
Chris, how about on let's switch gears to some family matters, family questions. With my children and taking them out in public to restaurants, I hope that I'm correct on this, and I'm waiting for it to all start to gel. But my kids are pretty wild at times. One of them might be on his best behavior, and the other two are anything but. And it becomes embarrassing, and it's loud, and they're running circles around the restaurant. You probably haven't had that problem with your daughter, but were there places that you could reliably go, and you're like, she's going to be fine, and she's not going to be causing a scene and getting upset. Did you ever go through that stuff where you're thinking, surely we'll do this enough times and they'll see how other people act, and then maybe it's because I've got 3 and I don't know what I was trying to say. I don't know what we were thinking, but I probably need to edit that out in case
probably need to cut that one.
In case they hear this in another 12 years.
No, I mean that I think that's the key issue, is because I've just got Nora, just one. So we've got her outnumbered. So it's pretty easy to play defense. And over the years, she's great going to restaurants, because I think the other thing, though, in addition to the fact that y'all are outnumbered, 3-on-2, that's tough. 3-on-1, like if it were just you, that I can't even imagine. But just beyond being outnumbered, it's probably that, like, there's always, even if you've got 2 that are on good behavior, if one of them is going to start egging somebody on, eventually it's gonna cause a scene. Like, there's just too many opportunities. So if Nora's just at the table with us, nobody's egging her on, so she doesn't get riled up.
That's right.
I think that might be the key.
How about, is she an adventurous eater? Have you gotten her to try things that maybe she's well ahead of her age group, or is she, grilled cheese and French fries?
No, she's a great eater. Sally and I, we both cook a lot. We both like to eat, and we try to feed her anything that we would eat, and she's pretty good about it. She's got for a 7-year-old, I would say she has a pretty advanced palate. I mean, she eats a bigger variety of foods and flavors than, I have probably several adults that I know. So yeah, she's doing pretty good.
Well, she's very fortunate to have you two. I haven't seen Sally in a few years, but I just have as a coach would say, a tremendous amount of respect for Sally and for you two as parents.
She always does things the right way,
And I probably should have started off saying, obviously I have a tremendous amount of respect. Well, obviously we could have played better in the second quarter, but obviously it's always obvious. Why is everything obvious? I sometimes disagree when it's, obviously I'm about to tell you something and I'm like, well, I didn't.
It wasn't obvious to me. I don't think it's obvious. I don't think it's so obvious.
Well, we got to wrap up here. I hate that we have to, but we were talking before we started recording. I'm trying to keep these episodes trim and fit and bite-size, relatively bite-size. So maybe a couple yes or no questions here. A little bit of silly season. Okay. Pretend I'm somebody at the drive-thru. Okay, sir, would you like mild, medium, or hot sauce? I'm going to throw some packets at you. Which ones do you want?
Got to go with the hot. Absolutely, the hot.
All right.
The hottest you got.
Would you like anything? Some Arby's sauce, honey mustard, hot or spicy ketchup? What would you like, sir?
I'm pretty intrigued by this hot and spicy ketchup. I don't know that I've had that, but I'll give that a try. Yeah.
I think that is an Arby's thing.
I need to get back to Arby's.
It's
probably been since I worked at the Birmingham News that I've been to an Arby's, honestly.
Yeah.
There used to be one across the street from Stillwater, and that would be a great, 2 a.m. meal.
When it comes to cycling, any cycling stories, any cool adventures that you've had?
This is probably a story this one's embarrassing for me. I don't know why I would share this on the airwaves, but no, one time I dislocated my shoulder, fell off my bike, and it wasn't even like a cool scenario that I was going down some descent and, flying down the road at like 40 miles an hour and had some gnarly crash or anything. No, I was pulling up to a red light. I kind of got distracted by a car that had gone around me, and they kind of buzzed me and honked at me a little bit, and I was a little flustered. But nevertheless, I should have kept things in check. But I was pulling up to this light, and I don't know how much you know about road cycling, DMAC, but those of us who really take it seriously, we have special shoes and special pedals where we clip in so
Yeah.
that our feet are really like connected to the pedals. Gives you more efficient pedaling. But that, you clip in, so that means that when you come to a stop, you have to unclip so that you can put your foot on the ground. And I was distracted and managed to sort of lean over, and I could not get my foot unclipped, and just
Oh
fell
no.
onto my shoulder, and the so that was bad. But the worst part is that was like, I don't know, 4 hours before I was supposed to go with my family to the airport for an
Oh.
international vacation.
Oh no. What is
So
going through
we
your
had to
mind
reschedule that one.
as the bike is starting to fall to that side and you've what's going through your mind? You're helpless.
I mean, so that's one where that is in cycling culture, in road cycling culture, not being able to get unclipped and just falling over in an embarrassing fashion is something that happens to people, and you know that it's a possibility, but you don't really think it's ever going to happen to you because just how could it?
Mm.
So that was the first thing that was really going through my mind. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually happening to me. And then when I hit the ground and got up, it was more like, oh no, I'm supposed to go to the airport in 3 hours, and I know that I just dislocated my shoulder. I got to get this thing
Wow.
popped back in. But no, I went to an urgent care, and they would not put it back in. And they, in an effort to try to help me get this taken care of more quickly, they set me up with an appointment at an orthopedist. But it took quite a long time to see this guy, and he ended up, because it had been out for so long, was uncomfortable putting it back in. So he sent me to the emergency room, and was nice enough
What?
to not charge me for the visit. I appreciated that. And then he also called the emergency room ahead of time as I was on the way, to let them know that I was coming in and that I needed my shoulder that had been out of socket for like 6 hours to be put back into socket immediately. And so I got there, and somebody yanked on my arm for about 30 seconds and got it back in.
What about the
So
flight?
that was an interesting day. What about the flight? Yeah, we didn't make the flight.
Oh,
Yeah, we had to reschedule that one.
reschedule.
Reschedule. Yeah, that's right.
Oh man. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. It shows that you're human. We're all human. And we're just trying to
It's true.
get through this life and pretend like that accident never happened. We're fine. Everything's great. Everything's good. I didn't just do that. I mean, I did, but
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that's the complete denial that I was in. Is that as soon as I got up and realized that my shoulder was dislocated, I was like, that's okay. I'll just get it popped back in. Still going to make the flight. I mean, clearly, as soon as I hit the ground, we weren't making that flight. But there were a good 2 hours there where I was convinced that no, we're still going to make this flight.
and there was were you wincing in pain? Was there anybody there to console you? You know, like when a player goes down in the field and you've got kind of that circle around of the people in the khakis that get down on their knees and they're rubbing the back and they're doing everything they can to comfort and they're trained to do. Did you have any attendees to you that knelt down with those sneakers and the khakis and saying, "Sir, are you all right?" And then they help you up
No,
and then people start applauding.
no, there was no applause. There was no consolation of any sort. I was just standing on the side of the road, having to call Sally and say, "So, we got a problem here. I'm going to need you to come pick me up. Can you come get me and take me to the urgent care right now?" No, it actually it didn't hurt that much at first, but I'll tell you what, when your shoulder's out of socket for like 6 hours, it starts to hurt eventually.
Well, Chris, on that note,
On that tragic note,
anything that you're listening to right now, any podcast that you want to say, hey, this everyone needs to hear this. Nobody knows about it, but I know about it. And anything you want to plug, or is there some 80s hardcore band that's back in your rotation?
there's not an 80s hardcore band. I'm a big Vampire Weekend fan, and they put out an album earlier this year that I think is like a pretty seminal album, pretty excellent sort of soundtrack for the times. I think it'll go down as when the decade's over, it'll be on like sort of best of decade type list. And I saw them in concert here in Atlanta last weekend, which is why they're on my mind. And it's a great show, fantastic. I recommend listening to Vampire Weekend for anybody who doesn't. Podcasts, I mean, obviously Dan Time is the most important podcast. Other than that, I like Split Zone Duo is a very good college football podcast. It's kind of a little bit out of the mainstream. They don't talk about college football the way that I feel like most college football podcasts or TV shows or radio shows do. So it's kind of a nice little bit of a change of pace. They have good analysis, good commentary. I like a show called How Long Gone for sort of vapid cultural commentary. But obviously, Dan Time's got to stay at the top of the feed.
That really means the world to me, Chris. That out of everything out there, that you put Dan Time at the top. But it's just, I need a second here.
You're tearing up, yeah. I hope you have some tissues nearby.
I've been coming from you. It's just it's that's all I need. I've been, people just seek the approval of certain family members or a peer group or something, and they want to make sure, they want to know that that person and that entity approves of them. That's my confession, this entire project. I just want to know that Chris is proud of this project and wants to see it continue. So, well, that is some wind in the sail.
That was the big meaning of Dan Time. That's what you teased in that trailer all those months and years ago.
Well, this is your episode 6. I think this will be 69, and who knows how long it lasts. It's not always been easy, folks. If you're listening, you get new episodes every week. I couldn't begin to tell you how some of these weeks, how it happens, because life happens and things happen, but somehow you get more material, and I hope this was the content you were looking for.
Just like working on the sports desk every night. Somehow that content keeps coming and it ends up in your feed.
Chris, do you miss writing fantasy corners?
The fantasy corners, writing a little fantasy baseball blurb, it was sometimes you really felt it and it just flowed from the keyboard just right out of your fingers. It was a natural. Sometimes you were really banging your head against the wall trying to come up with 3 paragraphs about some guy who you think is gonna go 2 for 4 that night. It'd be tough sometimes.
I remember you'd be just trying to write the perfect 2 inches of copy. I don't know. I mean, it was like, who's going to read this? I mean, and that was the beautiful thing back then, is there were no clicks or likes or anything. It's just that is wound up in somebody's house, in their yard, in some restaurant. Maybe they read it. Maybe, yeah.
Lining their pet's crate.
Chris, this has been a wonderful time. Always enjoy connecting with you. I think the world of you, Chris, and hopefully we can get together for our annual, sometimes semi-annual Blue Wahoos game. Yeah. Occasionally I'm in Atlanta, usually not for very long, but hope I get to see you in the near future.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, T-Mac.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Dan Time Podcast. So happy to have Chris Fuhrmeister here. If you like the show, dantimepod@gmail.com. At dantimepod, you can watch or play this on YouTube if it's easier. You can listen on Spotify. Wherever you listen, check it out. I appreciate you as a Dan Time listener. Chris, have a great rest of the week. Let's do this again before the next year mark.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon, buddy. I love you, man.
Yep. Likewise, D-Mac. Thank you.